Picture this. The most prestigious pet auction in the galaxy, held aboard Nexus 7, where the wealthy and important go to buy their exotic companions. Now picture it going absolutely, spectacularly wrong. Zephyr had been working the Galactic Pet Emporium for 12 years, and in that time he'd seen some real disasters. Sentient mushrooms that screamed when touched. Three-headed space cats that argued with themselves. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared him for the train wreck that was lot number 47. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted beings of indeterminate gender, Zephyr announced through his translator, trying to maintain his professional composure while internally screaming. We present Specimen 47, a unique canine-adjacent creature from the Andromeda sector. The thing sitting in the display cage looked like someone had crossed a golden retriever with a geological survey. 6 legs, golden fur, and honest-to-God crystals growing out of its back like some kind of living chandelier. It sat there, panting happily, completely oblivious to the fact that its entire existence was apparently an affront to civilized society. "What are those growths?" demanded Ambassador Krex, his 4 eye stalks recoiling in disgust. "It looks diseased. Those are natural crystal formations." Zephyr replied, reading from his notes. "Completely harmless according to our veterinary assessment." The Veltharian delegate made a noise like a deflating balloon. "Unacceptable. Our species values symmetry. Why does it have 6 legs? How barbaric." Zephyr watched the bidding paddle stay firmly down. Strike 1. "The excess limbs provide superior stability and agility," he offered hopefully. "It's too cheerful," sniffed the Graxian representative, her metallic skin gleaming with disdain. "Our pets must reflect our stoic nature. This creature appears to be enjoying itself." Strike 2. Zephyr was beginning to understand why this particular lot had been marked as problematic in the catalog. The creature demonstrates high intelligence and adaptability. He tried again, but the Centaurian buyer was already shaking all 3 of his heads. "Intelligence in a pet. How undignified. We prefer our companions decorative and quiet." Strike 3, 4, 5, and 6. In 15 minutes, Zephyr had managed to offend every major species in the galaxy. The creature, apparently named Grundle, according to his paperwork, just kept wagging its tail, completely unaware that it was the most unwanted being in the known universe. "Do I hear any bids?" Zephyr asked, though at this point he was mostly going through the motions. "Starting at 500 credits? Silence. The kind of silence that makes you question your life choices. 200 credits. More silence." Grundle yawned. 100 credits for this unique specimen. That's when Jake Martinez, 22 years old and armed with nothing but a janitor's paycheck and questionable decision-making skills, raised his hand. "I'll take him." The silence that followed Jake's bid was deafening. Every alien in the auction house turned to stare at the human in the janitor's uniform who had just volunteered to adopt what was essentially a geological disaster with legs. Zephyr blinked slowly, his translator crackling with static. Did someone actually bid?" "Yeah, that was me," Jake said, raising his hand higher like he was in school. 100 credits, right? "Sir, are you absolutely certain?" Zephyr asked, and you could hear the desperation in his voice. 12 years of auction experience, and this was definitely going in his memoirs under the chapter titled "Things That Make You Lose Faith in Sentient Life." Jake looked at Grundle, who had perked up at the sound of his voice and was now wagging his tail so hard his entire crystal-covered rear end was wiggling. "Yeah, I'm sure. Sold," Zephyr practically shouted before Jake could change his mind. To the human in the back. And that's how Jake Martinez became the proud owner of what every expert in the galaxy had deemed a complete biological mistake. The buyer's remorse hit about 30 seconds after Jake signed the paperwork. Standing in the pet pickup area, watching Grundle sniff everything within a 6-foot radius while leaving glittery crystal dust on every surface, Jake started doing some mental math. 100 credits was his entire monthly entertainment budget. His food budget. His maybe I'll buy something nice for myself budget. "What have I done?" he muttered, as Grundle decided that Jake's shoe was the most fascinating thing in the universe and began licking it with a tongue that was disturbingly blue. The transport cage they provided looked like it had been designed for something with the standard 4-leg configuration. Grundle kept getting his extra legs stuck, and every time he moved his crystal formations scraped against the metal bars with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. Jake's quarters were what you might generously call compact if you were a real estate agent or a glorified closet if you were honest. 17 square meters of living space that now had to accommodate 1 human and 1 oversized, crystalline alien dog who apparently had no concept of personal space. The moment Jake opened the transport cage, Grundle bounded out and immediately began exploring. And by exploring I mean he started eating Jake's maintenance tools. "No, don't eat that." Jake lunged for his sonic wrench, but Grundle had already swallowed it. That's not food. Grundle looked at him with what could only be described as canine confusion, then promptly ate a spare circuit board. Okay, new rule, Jake said, frantically moving his equipment to higher shelves. No eating the electronics. But Grundle wasn't listening. He'd discovered Jake's recycling bin and was now happily munching on aluminum cans like they were treats. The crunching sound was deeply unsettling. Jake's comm unit buzzed. Hey Jake, how'd the auction go? It was Maria, his friend from the hydroponics bay. Please tell me you didn't actually buy anything. Jake looked at Grundle, who had now moved on to eating the metal brackets that held up Jake's storage shelves. Well, funny story about that. Oh no, what did you do? I may have purchased a slightly used alien pet. Jake, your living space is barely big enough for you. Where are you going to put a pet? As if on cue, Grundle finished dismantling Jake's shelving unit and curled up in the pile of twisted metal like it was the most comfortable bed in the galaxy. I'm starting to figure that out, Jake said weakly. The next few hours were what you might call educational. Jake learned that Grundle had absolutely no understanding of human bathroom etiquette, that his crystals glowed different colors depending on his mood, and that apparently everything made of metal was fair game for midnight snacking. This is insane, Jake muttered, sweeping up crystal dust for the third time that day. I bought a pet that eats furniture and glows in the dark. But then Grundle did something unexpected. He walked over to where Jake was sitting, put his head on Jake's knee, and looked up at him with eyes that were far too intelligent for a creature that had just eaten a doorknob. For a moment, Jake forgot about his demolished quarters and his empty bank account. There was something almost human in that gaze. Something that said thank you for not walking away when everyone else did. Well, Jake said, scratching behind one of Grundle's 6 ears. I guess we're roommates now. Grundle's crystals pulsed with warm golden light, and for the first time since the auction, Jake thought maybe he hadn't made a complete mistake. Of course, that feeling lasted right up until Grundle ate his coffee maker. Living with Grundle was like sharing your space with a friendly natural disaster. A friendly natural disaster that apparently had opinions about Jake's work schedule. It started on Tuesday morning when Jake was running late for his shift. He'd overslept because Grundle had spent half the night rearranging the metal scraps he kept eating, organizing them into neat little piles that chimed softly when the station's artificial breeze hit them. Jake had found it oddly soothing, which probably said something disturbing about his mental state. Okay buddy, I've got to go clean the reactor coolant systems, Jake said, grabbing his equipment belt. Try not to eat anything load-bearing while I'm gone. But when Jake reached for his gear, he found something unexpected. His tools were arranged in perfect order, sorted by function and size. His sonic wrenches were lined up from smallest to largest. His diagnostic scanners were grouped by frequency range. Even his cleaning supplies were organized with military precision. Did you do this? Jake asked. Grundle wagged his tail, and his crystals pulsed with what Jake was starting to recognize as pride. That's when it hit him. The creature everyone had rejected for being too intelligent had spent the night organizing Jake's chaotic equipment storage. Not randomly, but with actual understanding of what each tool was for. You know what these are, don't you? Jake said slowly. Grundle tilted his head and made a sound that was half bark, half electronic chirp. Jake decided to test a theory. He picked up a malfunctioning scanner that had been giving him trouble for weeks. This thing's broken. Keeps giving false readings in the gamma spectrum. Grundle approached the device, sniffed it once, then gently took it in his mouth. His back crystals began to glow with soft blue light, and Jake could swear he heard a faint humming sound. After a moment, Grundle set the scanner down and stepped back. Jake ran a diagnostic. Perfect calibration across all spectrums. Holy space dust, Jake whispered. You're not just smart, you're a living repair shop. From that day forward, Jake's work routine changed completely. Grundle became his unofficial assistant, and frankly, he was better at the job than most of the certified technicians on the station. Broken equipment got the Grundle treatment. Malfunctioning systems seemed to repair themselves when Grundle was around. Jake's productivity reports went from adequate to how is this even possible? I don't understand it, Jake confided to Maria over lunch. Yesterday the waste reclamation system in Section C was completely fried. I brought Grundle down there. He walked around for 5 minutes, and suddenly everything's running at 110% efficiency. That's impossible, Maria said. Those systems are quantum encrypted. You'd need a degree in xenotechnology just to understand how they work. Jake shrugged. Tell that to Grundle. But it wasn't just the technical stuff. Jake was starting to realize that Grundle understood him in ways that went beyond pet-owner dynamics. When Jake had a particularly rough day dealing with condescending alien supervisors, Grundle would curl up next to him and purr, actually purr, like some kind of six-legged crystal cat. When Jake was frustrated with a difficult repair, Grundle would gently nudge him toward the right solution. The breakthrough came when Jake found Grundle in his quarters, surrounded by spare parts and electronic components, building something. Not eating them, building with them. The construction looked like a three-dimensional puzzle made of circuits and metal, pulsing with soft light from Grundle's crystals. "What is that?" Jake asked. Grundle looked up at him, then back at his creation. The device suddenly projected a holographic image, a schematic of the station's power grid, with optimization improvements marked in glowing lines. Jake's jaw dropped. "You're designing upgrades to our power systems." Grundle wagged his tail. "The other species at the auction," Jake said. "The pieces falling into place. They rejected you because you're not just intelligent, you're smarter than they are." Grundle's crystals dimmed slightly, and Jake caught something that looked almost like sadness in those two intelligent eyes. "They were scared of you," Jake realized. Scared of a pet that might be more capable than they were. Jake sat down next to Grundle and scratched behind his ears. "Well, their loss is my gain, buddy. Though I've got to ask, if you're this smart, why didn't you just fix the auction house's systems and prove your worth?" Grundle made a soft whimpering sound and nuzzled against Jake's shoulder. "Because they never gave you the chance," Jake said quietly. "They saw the crystals and the extra legs and decided you were defective before they bothered to look closer." For the first time since the auction, Jake felt genuinely angry on Grundle's behalf. Here was a being with incredible abilities, reduced to sitting in a cage while pompous aliens complained about his appearance. "Well, you're stuck with me now," Jake said. "And I think you're perfect exactly as you are." Grundle's crystals blazed with warm golden light, and Jake could swear he saw something like gratitude in that alien gaze. Of course, that's when the station's emergency alarms started blaring, and Jake's quiet life as a janitor with an unusual pet was about to become significantly more complicated. The emergency klaxons weren't the gentle "please evacuate in an orderly fashion" type. These were the "you have minutes before everyone dies horribly in the vacuum of space" variety. Jake had heard them exactly once before during a drill that left half the station's population with permanent hearing damage. "All personnel to emergency stations," came Commander Vex's voice over the comm system, and Jake could hear the barely controlled panic underneath her usual military composure. "We have a catastrophic failure in the primary life support matrix. This is not a drill." Jake looked at Grundle, whose crystals had immediately shifted to a deep red color, the first time Jake had seen that particular hue. "That doesn't look good, buddy." They made their way to the nearest information terminal, fighting against crowds of panicking aliens all trying to get to the escape pods simultaneously. The Graxians were shoving everyone aside with their metallic appendages, the Veltharians were forming orderly lines that everyone else was ignoring, and the Centaurians were arguing among themselves about evacuation protocols. Jake managed to access the emergency status board, and what he saw made his stomach drop into his boots. The quantum fusion reactor that powered the station's life support was experiencing cascade failures across 17 different subsystems. Oxygen recycling was down to 30% capacity. Artificial gravity was fluctuating wildly, and the atmospheric processors were completely offline. Estimated time to critical life support failure 47 minutes, the computer announced helpfully. "Fantastic," Jake muttered. "Just enough time to really think about how we're all going to die." But Grundle wasn't listening. He was staring at the status display with intense concentration, his crystals now pulsing in complex patterns that Jake had never seen before. Red, blue, white, gold, cycling through colors in what looked almost like some kind of code. "Engineering teams to Reactor Bay 7, Commander Vex's voice crackled over the comm. "All available technical personnel report for emergency repairs." Jake looked down at his janitor's badge, then at Grundle. "Well, we're not exactly qualified, but I guess everyone's invited to this disaster." They fought their way through the corridors to Reactor Bay 7, where Jake found a scene of barely controlled chaos. Chief Engineer Korvac, a 7-foot-tall Thraxian with more cybernetic implants than original body parts, was standing in front of a massive holographic display showing the reactor's failing systems. Around him, the station's best engineers and technicians were running diagnostics, shouting suggestions, and generally accomplishing nothing useful. "The quantum matrix destabilized 43 minutes ago," Korvac was explaining to Commander Vex. "We've tried rerouting power through the secondary conduits, but the feedback loops are creating harmonic resonance in the fusion chamber. Every time we fix one system, 2 others fail." "How long do we have?" Vex asked. "At current degradation rates, maybe 30 minutes before total atmospheric failure." Jake positioned himself near the back of the crowd, trying to stay out of the way while Grundle studied the engineering displays with that same intense concentration. The crystals on his back were cycling through colors faster now, and Jake could swear he was hearing a faint humming sound. What about emergency power from the auxiliary reactors? Suggested Dr. Nexus, the station's head of xenotechnology. Already tried, Korvac replied. The power coupling systems aren't compatible with the main life support grid. We'd need to completely rewire the entire network, and we don't have the time or the spare parts. Could we evacuate to the outer ring and seal off the damaged sections? This from Lieutenant Zara, the station's security chief. Not enough escape pods for the current population. We'd save maybe 40% of the people on board. Jake watched the experts debate increasingly desperate solutions while Grundle grew more and more agitated beside him. The alien's crystals were now strobing rapidly between blue and white, and he was making soft whimpering sounds. The quantum resonance chamber is the key, Dr. Nexus was saying. If we could just stabilize the harmonic frequencies, the cascade failure would stop. But the computational requirements are beyond our current systems. We'd need a quantum processor with the capacity to calculate 17 billion harmonic permutations simultaneously. That's when Grundle did something that made everyone in the room stop talking. He barked. Not his usual happy yip, but a sharp, commanding sound that somehow cut through all the technical chatter and panic conversation. Every head in the room turned toward Jake and his defective pet. Ah. Jake said, suddenly aware that he was the focus of attention from the station's entire command staff. Sorry about that. He's been acting weird since the alarms started. Is that the creature you purchased at the auction? Commander Vex asked, her 4 eye stalks focusing on Grundle with intense curiosity. Yeah, that's Grundle. He's actually pretty smart. Korvac's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Grundle. Smart how? Jake felt heat rising in his cheeks. Well, he's been helping me with repairs. Minor stuff, mostly. Equipment calibration, system diagnostics. That sort of thing. System diagnostics. Dr. Nexus stepped closer, her scientific interest clearly piqued. What kind of diagnostics? He fixed my quantum scanner yesterday, Jake admitted. And he's been optimizing power distribution in the sections I clean. Actually, he designed some improvements to the power grid that I haven't had a chance to submit to engineering yet. The room went very quiet. Grundle's crystals were now glowing so brightly that they were casting shadows on the walls. Mr. Martinez, Commander Vex said slowly. Are you telling me that your pet has been performing unauthorized modifications to station systems? Well, when you put it like that, it sounds bad, Jake said. But everything he's done has improved efficiency. I've got the performance reports to prove it. Korvac and Dr. Nexus exchanged glances. What species is this creature? Korvac asked. I honestly don't know, Jake replied. The auction house just called him canine adjacent and problematic. Grundle chose that moment to walk directly to the main engineering console, rear up on his hind legs, and place his front paws on the control panel. His crystals flared brilliant white, and suddenly every screen in the room lit up with data streams that moved too fast for organic eyes to follow. He's interfacing with the reactor control system, Dr. Nexus breathed. Without any external connections. Those crystals, they're not just decorative. They're biological quantum processors. The humming sound Jake had been hearing grew louder, and now everyone could hear it. It wasn't coming from the machinery, it was coming from Grundle. Commander, Jake said quietly. I think my dog wants to help. What happened next was either the most beautiful thing Jake had ever witnessed, or the most terrifying depending on how you felt about your pet suddenly becoming one with a space station's central nervous system. Commander Vex looked at Jake like he just suggested they solve their oxygen crisis by opening all the airlocks. You want us to let your pet interface with our reactor controls? I know how it sounds, Jake said, watching Grundle's crystals pulse in increasingly complex patterns. But look at him. He's already connected somehow. And honestly, what's the worst that could happen? We all die? Because that's happening anyway in about 25 minutes. Dr. Nexus was running her scanner over Grundle, and her expression shifted from skeptical to amazed to slightly horrified. Commander, these readings are unprecedented. His neural activity is off the charts. And those crystals aren't just biological, they're quantum mechanical structures. Living quantum computers. Impossible, Korvac stated flatly. No known species has evolved natural quantum processing capabilities. Well, apparently one has, Jake said. And right now he's the only one in this room who seems to understand what's wrong with your reactor. As if to prove Jake's point, Grundle turned away from the console and walked directly to a wall panel that Jake was pretty sure nobody had been paying attention to. He pressed his nose against it, and suddenly a hidden diagnostic display flickered to life, showing subsystem failures that hadn't appeared on any of the main engineering screens. How did he know that panel was there? Vex demanded. Because he's been mapping the entire station's systems, Jake realized. Every time I took him on maintenance rounds, he wasn't just following me around. He was learning, memorizing every circuit, every connection, every possible failure point. Grundle barked once, then returned to the main console. This time, when he placed his paws on the control panel, something extraordinary happened. Lines of light began racing along the crystals on his back, connecting and branching like a living circuit board. The humming sound grew louder, and Jake could feel it in his bones, a harmonic frequency that seemed to resonate with the station itself. He's not just interfacing with the reactor, Dr. Nexus whispered, her scanner now beeping frantically. He's interfacing with everything. Life support, power distribution, atmospheric processing, even the artificial gravity generators. He's turned himself into a biological extension of the station's computer systems. The main display screen suddenly cleared, and instead of the chaotic error messages and failure warnings, neat columns of data began appearing. But this wasn't random data, it was solutions. Optimized power routing protocols, corrected harmonic frequencies for the quantum fusion chamber, repair sequences for damaged atmospheric processors. This is impossible, Korvac muttered. But Jake could see him studying the data streams with growing amazement. These calculations, we'd need our entire computer array running for days to generate optimization patterns this complex. How long has he been doing this? Commander Vex asked Jake. I don't know, Jake admitted. Maybe since the day I brought him home. Every repair I thought I was making, every system that seemed to fix itself when he was around. He was actually running diagnostics and making improvements the whole time. Grundle's crystals flared brilliant white, and suddenly every system alarm in the reactor bay went silent. The cascade failure warnings disappeared. Atmospheric processing indicators shifted from red to yellow to green. The quantum fusion chamber's harmonic resonance stabilized. Oxygen levels returning to normal, Dr. Nexus reported, her voice filled with disbelief. Artificial gravity stabilized. Power distribution optimized across all sectors. He fixed everything. But Grundle wasn't done. The light patterns racing along his crystals grew more complex, and new data began appearing on the screens. Efficiency improvements that would reduce the station's power consumption by 30%. Atmospheric recycling upgrades that would allow them to support twice their current population. Navigation improvements that would cut their travel time between systems by half. He's not just fixing our current problems, Korvac realized. He's upgrading our entire infrastructure. Jake looked at his pet, who apparently wasn't exactly a pet, with a mixture of pride and complete bewilderment. Grundle buddy, how long have you been able to do this? Grundle turned to look at him, and for a moment, the crystals dimmed to their normal soft glow. He made that happy yipping sound Jake had grown to love, then walked over and put his head against Jake's leg. He's been able to do this the whole time, Jake said quietly. But nobody ever gave him the chance. Commander Vex was studying the optimization data with intense concentration. Mr. Martinez, do you have any idea what your companion actually is? I'm starting to get a picture, Jake replied. The auction house said he was from the Andromeda sector. All those species that rejected him called him too intelligent or disturbing. I think maybe his people are living computers. Biological quantum processors designed to interface with and improve technological systems. And they were selling him as a pet. Dr. Nexus sounded horrified. I don't think they knew what he was, Jake said. To them, he just looked like a weird dog with crystals growing out of his back. That's when the communication system crackled to life, and Zephyr's voice filled the reactor bay. Commander Vex, we're receiving multiple incoming transmission requests. It appears word has spread about the unique capabilities of lot number 47. We have 17 different species offering to purchase the creature for amounts ranging from 50,000 to 12 million credits. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. They want to buy him. The Zenthari delegation is offering 20 million, Zephyr continued. They're particularly interested in his computational abilities. Jake looked at Grundle, who was still leaning against his leg, tail wagging happily. Around them, the engineering staff was staring at readouts showing the most advanced technological improvements they'd ever seen. And somewhere out there, every major power in the galaxy was preparing to make offers that would set Jake up for life. Mr. Martinez, Commander Vex said quietly. I think we need to discuss your pet's future. Jake reached down and scratched behind Grundle's ears, feeling the warm pulse of the crystals under his fingers. Yeah, he said. I think we do. The bidding war for Grundle lasted exactly 37 seconds. That's how long it took Jake to stand up, look Commander Vex directly in her primary eye stalk, and say, No, Mr. Martinez, Vex said carefully. I'm not sure you understand the magnitude of these offers. The Zenthari are now bidding 35 million credits. That's more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. I understand perfectly, Jake replied, his hand resting protectively on Grundle's head, and I said no. The reactor bay had filled with station personnel, all of them staring at Jake like he'd just turned down the chance to become a god. Which, economically speaking, he basically had. 50 million credits, Zephyr's voice crackled over the comm. The Graxians just offered 50 million. Still no, Jake said. Dr. Nexus stepped forward. Jake, think about this rationally. With that kind of money, you could buy your own station, your own fleet, you could fund research projects, explore new systems, do anything you wanted. I already have everything I want, Jake said, and he realized with some surprise that he meant it. I've got a friend who's smarter than everyone in this room combined, who saved all our lives, and who was sitting in a cage being called defective 3 days ago. You think I'm going to sell him to the same people who rejected him? Grundle's crystals pulsed with warm golden light, and he made a soft sound that was purely contentment. Besides, Jake continued, look around. Grundle didn't just fix our life support. He upgraded our entire station. Our power efficiency is up 30%. Our environmental systems are running better than they have in years. Our navigation computers are processing data faster than they were designed to handle. He's made this place better just by being here. Commander Vex studied the efficiency reports scrolling across her datapad. You raise an interesting point. The improvements he's implemented are worth far more than the operational costs we've been projecting. Exactly, Jake said. So here's my counter-proposal. Grundle and I stay. I get promoted to whatever fancy title makes the paperwork happy. Grundle becomes our official station consultant, and instead of selling him to some collector who wants to lock him in a lab, we figure out how to help others like him. Others like him? Korvac asked. Think about it. If Grundle ended up in that auction, there are probably more of his people out there. Maybe they're all being sold as defective pets, because nobody realizes what they actually are. Maybe we could find them, help them, give them a place where their abilities are appreciated instead of feared. Dr. Nexus was nodding enthusiastically. A sanctuary program. We could establish protocols for identifying and protecting biotechnological species. The research applications alone would be groundbreaking. 75 million credits, Zephyr announced. The Veltharians are very insistent. Tell them Grundle's not for sale, Jake said firmly. Tell them all that. Commander Vex was quiet for a long moment, studying Jake and Grundle. Finally she said, Mr. Martinez, how would you feel about a promotion to Director of Interspecies Relations? Jake blinked. That's a real job. It is now. Your responsibilities would include overseeing our new biotechnological species integration program, serving as Grundle's liaison with Station Command, and managing our improved systems efficiency protocols. Does it come with better quarters? Jake asked. Because mine are currently held together with crystal dust and whatever's left of my furniture. Vex's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. I think we can arrange something more suitable for both of you. 3 months later, Jake's new office overlooked the station's central garden, where Grundle had become something of a celebrity. Not the kind of celebrity that gets locked in a cage and stared at, but the kind that gets invited to birthday parties and asked to pose for pictures with visiting dignitaries. Jake watched through his window as Grundle demonstrated his latest project to a group of fascinated youngsters from the station's school program. He'd figured out how to make his crystals create holographic displays, and he was currently showing them a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with all the trade routes optimized for maximum efficiency and minimum environmental impact. He's teaching them, Maria said, joining Jake at the window. I never thought I'd see the day when kids would get excited about quantum mechanics, but somehow he makes it look like a game. He's good at that, Jake agreed. Making complicated things seem simple. The Interspecies Relations Office had become the most popular department on the station, mostly because it was where Grundle spent his time when he wasn't optimizing systems or playing with children. They'd rescued 6 more of his species from various pet auctions and exotic animal dealers across the sector. Each one had been labeled as defective or problematic by sellers who had no idea they were trafficking in sentient quantum computers. The rescue program had been so successful that they'd had to expand it beyond Grundle's species. It turned out the galaxy was full of intelligent beings who'd been mislabeled, misunderstood, or simply overlooked, because they didn't fit conventional definitions of sentience. Director Martinez, came a voice from the office door. Jake turned to see Lieutenant Zara holding a datapad and trying not to smile. We've got another situation. What kind of situation? The kind where someone's trying to sell a decorative plant that keeps rearranging the furniture in their shop and apparently has opinions about interior design. Jake looked at Grundle, who had stopped his demonstration and was now wagging his tail enthusiastically. His crystals were pulsing with excitement. "Looks like we've got another rescue mission," Jake said. "What do you say, buddy? Ready to help another misunderstood genius find a home?" Grundle barked once, his crystals flaring with golden light, and bounded toward the door. As they headed out to investigate their newest case, Jake reflected on how much his life had changed since that disastrous auction. He'd gone from being a janitor with questionable decision-making skills to running the galaxy's first interspecies sanctuary program. He had a job he loved, friends who respected him, and a best friend who just happened to be the most advanced biological computer in known space. Not bad for someone who'd impulse bought a pet, because everyone else thought it was defective. Behind them, the station hummed with perfect efficiency, its systems optimized by a creature who'd been rejected by every intelligent species in the galaxy. And in the central garden, holographic butterflies that Grundle had created for the children danced through the air, their wings shimmering with all the colors of stars. Sometimes, Jake thought, the best things in life are the ones that nobody else wants.